This is the Breakfast Leadership Podcast. Boundaries or burnout, you make the choice. Here's your host, Michael Levitt.
Welcome back. I've got Winkle Giulioni on the line. Hey, Julie, how are you?
I'm great, Michael. How are you?
I am great. You are the co-author of Help Them Grow or Watch Them Go, Career Conversations Organizations Need and Employees Want. And I know in the pre-show we talked a bit about how organizations need to take a longer, harder look in developing their employees if they want them to thrive in the organization and stick around. So what motivated you to write the book?
Well, I was blessed over the years with some really phenomenal leaders who were natural developers of people. And for much of my career, I didn't even recognize how great they were at it. I just kind of took it for granted, figured everybody in the workplace had these leaders who saw potential, who cared about the person beyond, the workflow, who looked for opportunities to boost their capacity and their confidence. And when I hit, I must have been about 30 years old before I hit my first, just not even a bad boss, just kind of a normal one who really wanted to know what I was going to do for her each day. And I realized as soon as I hit that experience, just how fortunate I had been, but how debilitating it can be to work for someone who doesn't have your growth and your best interest at heart. And so I quickly found myself in another role with another leader, but also sort of the rest of my career to helping leaders, helping managers develop this capacity to really focus on developing others.
It's crucial. And every organization that I've been a part of where I was the leader, I strongly advocated, even to the point of chasing employees down that weren't using their professional development budget allocation, saying, we need to do something. And there was a couple times where it took, I'd say about 4 or 5 months going back and forth to brainstorm basically and say, okay, this is what you want to do, and this is going to benefit you and the clients we serve. And there's been some situations where it was a dotted line type of thing to helping the customers or the clients, but I knew that it would make this individual more well-rounded in their role, which then of course played big dividends on them sticking around and actually thriving in the organization and coming up with all kinds of different things. I've been fortunate as well to work for organizations that believed in leadership development, because too often we find people will go into a leadership role and they'll say, congratulations, you're the new executive director or the CEO, and they don't train you actually how to do that role. So you're like, okay, well, I guess I need to figure this out on my own, which is a recipe for disaster in many cases, because when you go from a management type of environment to directing or leading, those are different roles. And if you try to use the management side of things too much, it's really like bringing the wrong tools to build a house. It's like, what am I going to, I need a hammer and I brought a saw. And it's one of those challenges that I see time and time again.
Well, and you're bringing up something that gets a lot of play in the leadership management arena. And it's like, what's the difference between a manager and a leader, right? And they're not necessarily synonymous. Managers are the ones who can kind of keep things moving forward, keep the train on the tracks, whereas leaders are making sure that the train is heading in the right direction. And you're right, the skill sets required, frankly, for both of those are unique and different from what might have been developed and honed as an individual contributor. I think so frequently we figure if somebody was a really great engineer, then sure, they'll be a great manager of engineers, and not always so much.
We sit in the sports world all the time where, some of the greatest professional athletes that have ever played will, dabble in coaching and they're horrible at it.
Mm-hmm.
And then vice versa, you'll see, some players that were decent players, they're not by what society would deem, Hall of Fame worthy, but
Yeah.
then they start winning all types of championships and win Coach of the Year awards or Manager of the Year awards.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, what's the difference on that? And a lot of times I see it's being, a student of the game, or in leadership, being a student of leadership and constantly learning new techniques, different perspectives on how to lead. And that's one of the things that's been really beneficial for me in my life and my career is I've studied from a Michael Hyatt or a John Maxwell or all the others. I look and see what they do, and I take things that would naturally work for me
Mm-hmm.
and implement them, and then things that aren't natural, I'll go, okay, maybe this is something I need to develop, a skill or an observation or a trait that I need to develop. Let's see. And of course, seeking feedback of your peers on what their thoughts are when it comes to trying to implement a different type of leadership style. And one of the things that I'm seeing, and I know you are too, is we're at this particular time where we've got 4 generations now working in the workforce, whether it's the baby boomers, Generation X, the millennials, and now Generation Z. So you've got 4 different entities all working together. And as a leader, you could have all of those people, reporting to you. And you go, okay, I can't cookie cutter this and lead all of them the same way. So I'm sure you see that too in the people you talk with, and that'd be an interesting to hear your take on that.
Yeah. In fact, I did some research on this, looking across a generational spectrum at the kind of the core beliefs and the priorities of employees. And of course, my hypothesis was that there would be some pretty stark differences among the generations. What I found out was that what we have in common is far greater than our points of departure across the generations. Whether you're a millennial, an Xer, a boomer, you still are looking for meaningful work. You're looking for a boss whom you respect and whom you can trust. And you're looking for opportunities to grow and learn throughout your career. It's interesting. I was just reflecting upon, you were talking about the different kinds of coaches and what is the difference between those who really excel and those who maybe fall a little bit short. My experience has been, it really comes down to their focus. Where are they focusing? Are they focusing on themselves? And if you were a star player, it's hard not to think about the game from how you're going to do it. Or are they focusing on others? And so the best leaders that I've experienced are the ones who are looking at the world through the lens of those whom they lead, who are thinking about their people and what's going to be required to help them contribute and build confidence and feel that sense of purpose and meaning. And that, to me, is really the game changer. It also sort of speaks to the whole generational thing, because you're so right. Given the diversity that we've got in the workplace, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution to anything. But I think sometimes folks think, well, if I can crack the code on the generation, then I'll have the approach for all millennials or all boomers or all whomever. And, the truth is, within each of those generations, within any group, you've got wild variation. And so, again, I think the best leaders are the ones who really take a, just for you, just for me approach, who look at each individual as unique and special and work to understand and bring forth the gifts that each of us has to bring, and then responds in a way that's unique and organic for that individual.
I love that analogy. And, my most recent experience where I was leading a multi-site healthcare clinic, I had a pretty diverse team of individuals, and they were all different as far as backgrounds. Ages were close, but there were some variances. But what they wanted out of life and their career varied, even though I could have a handful in the same type of role. And I made it a point to understand, and that's the big thing. If anybody takes anything away from any type of lesson or anything that we talk about today, or anything you ever read, is seek to understand. Seek to understand their point of view and what's important to them. I don't want to say motivate, because sometimes motivation comes and goes, but it ultimately comes down to what's important to that person for their career, for their life. What do they want to accomplish? What goals do they have? And understand those, and look for ways that the organization can honor those desires in a way to develop this individual to be more well-rounded. Because if they're really good at a new trait or a new skill or something, like I alluded to earlier, that may not be directly related to the service you provide, but indirectly it could make a huge difference in how they approach things. When you do that as an organization, you're going to have less turnover. You're going to have happier, more productive employees without hounding them to hit numbers. And yes, measurements and numbers and performance are a factor that you should measure, but you should also make sure that you encourage them and create the environment where it's easy for them to hit those numbers, and then exceed them. And not have it be a numbers game, but more of a, what can we do so you get fulfillment out of spending your 8 hours a day, 5 days a week kind of lifestyle, which many roles are still in.
Yeah. Well, and where hitting the numbers is really the natural outcome of how we've set things up to work, right?
Oh, it's true.
When I think about your comment about the commitment to understanding, in my mind, that really translates into a commitment to the relationships that we have with each other. And when leaders recognize that it's not just about the numbers and following up on the deadlines, that the way they can make the biggest difference, both for the individuals and the organization, is through relationship, then suddenly we've begun to hardwire into the DNA of the group and the organization an environment that will naturally help people reach those goals and hit those numbers. So you're not beating them over the head to make it happen.
Yeah, and with additional development, they could learn, techniques and other skills that would make it to the point where you would have to increase their numbers because they were blowing past the number anyway. And you say, okay, well, let's have an open conversation with them. It's like, okay, we, from a patient deliverable standpoint, it's okay, we're expecting you to see 5 patients a day if you're in a mental health type of thing. In an 8-hour day, that's giving at least an hour for every session, time for admin, lunch, all the good stuff. And if they are efficient and they're easily seeing 6 or 7 or 8, and the patient satisfaction surveys come back and they're getting glowing reviews, you're like, okay, you've discovered something. You have found a sweet spot in how you deliver your care to these individuals in a way where you're actually helping 2 more people a day. That's 10. That's actually to the point where, from the old average, you'd be working 7 days a week, which we wouldn't do that to you, but you are delivering as if you are. And you're not burning out as an employee. You're just operating and done right. I've seen individuals where they're just they almost looked like they were glowing. They were having so much fun in what they were doing. And if we can have environments where people are really enjoying their craft and what they're doing, and create an environment where that's encouraged, it makes a huge difference.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. My experience has been that when we help people kind of tap their competence, when they really feel like they're mastering this, that they're rocking this, whatever it is that they do, and we help them contribute more, to me, that creates this virtual cycle, this upward spiral of energy and more of those good things that the organization needs. At the same time, I think sometimes what I don't want to say a bad leader, but a leader who's not as informed or enlightened might do is look at that and say, okay, well, they can do 2 more. Maybe now they can do 3 more a day. And we can end up pushing folks, as you said, to the point of exhaustion and burnout. So the other way to tap that kind of competence and the glow and the ability, the superpowers that individuals present, is to find ways to help them share that with others. That's the other way to magnify your results, if you will, is by having those who really have nailed something teach others, share their best practices, let others in on, their secret tips and tactics, so that everyone in the group gets to benefit from that and enhance their own competence and contribution at the same time.
Yeah, it's crucial. And it just creates such a huge difference in the environment, and it resonates throughout. And you see it turns into this, I want to call it an epidemic, but it's an epidemic of this contagious, everyone just wants to be better at what they're doing. And they don't want to say, okay, I've taken this course, or I've had this training, now I can do this. No, it just creates this internal desire to want to learn more. And you have an organization that is supportive of that. Then you really start making some huge impact in whatever you're doing as an organization, no matter if you're making a product or a service or anything like that. That permeates through the organization. Your customers or clients see it, they feel it, and it's a game changer.
Yeah, I totally agree. And what you're describing is really a learning culture, where learning is deeply embedded into the DNA of how things are done. And it's not the negative kind of competition, but more a positive, encouraging sort of, I love epidemic and contagions. I know that they can sound a little bit negative, but in this case, it's really a positive one, where we're helping people catch the spirit of fun and joy and excitement and contribution that they can have in the organization.
Yeah, it makes such a big difference. So when you approach an organization that is the opposite of what we've been talking about, but they have a desire and they're going, okay, we want to implement this and have a more positive approach on development and leading our people in the right way. What are some of the crucial steps that you do first off to help them get the momentum to carry that through?
Well, a lot of it really boils down to leadership behaviors. And so a lot of my time is spent training and coaching leaders to think differently about their role and to appreciate the central role that development has in that. At the end of the day, leaders are the ones who are growing more capacity and growing more leaders in an organization. That same study I mentioned earlier, where I was looking across the generations, the other thing we discovered is that regardless of age, all employees believe that development is one of a leader's most fundamental responsibilities to employees. And so helping leaders appreciate just how profoundly important developing, growing, expanding one's contribution ability to contribute is to people is half the battle. recognizing that. And then the other half really is, what are the skills that managers can and leaders can begin to hone and apply day in and day out. So frequently when I start a conversation with leaders about developing others, the first thing they'll say is, yeah, I'd love to do that. I know it's really important, but who's got the time? And so that's one of the barriers that we need to really break down, because when it comes right down to it, development happens through relationship and through conversation. So it's not that it's an extra to do on somebody's list if we can make it part of our standard leadership cadence.
It all starts with leadership and leadership behaviors, whether it's an organization that is thriving and growing and wanting to do things, or it's stressed out to the max, burned out, people quitting, people going on disability, you name it. It all starts with leadership, and that's why leadership has never been more important than it is now, as we navigate through the changing workforce, and with AI and all kinds of different mechanisms and all of these things that we're being thrown at in the gig economy, you name it. There's all these little different factors that are making things challenging. It's those organizations that believe in professional development for their teams and their leaders are going to be able to withstand whatever changes the economy or the workforce world looks like.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one thing that I am keenly aware of right now is organizations that are redefining what that development looks like are the ones who are going to thrive. Because so many organizations for decades they've put development in a bit of a box, and it's sending somebody off to a workshop or an offsite, a seminar, e-learning, webinars, all of those formal learning mechanisms. And I make my living doing that, so don't get me wrong. It's good and it's important, but it's really the tip of the iceberg. And so what organizations need to master is development that's more organic, more ad hoc, in the moment, taking advantage of learning opportunities, challenges, stretch assignments, visibility opportunities, and just wringing more development out of day-to-day life. When there's a mistake or when there's a success or when anything happens, to take the moment to hit the pause button to say, what did we learn from that? That's development too. And it's development that operates at the speed of business, that can't be argued away with, hey, I don't have time for that, because we're already in the thick of it, having the experiences, just a matter of unpacking it for the learning.
Yeah, it's amazing. And just, again, focusing on, never stop learning, never stop developing your leaders and your teams. And it makes such a huge difference for organizations now and their success down the road, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been playing with the term longevity. We talk about longevity, living longer, but the only way that that's really worth anything and joyful is if we add the longevity piece of it, if we figure out how to become lifelong learners and keep learning throughout the process.
I love that phrase, and if I use it, I will definitely give you full 100% credit. And if somebody pays me to use it, I'll say, okay, what's your PayPal email? I'll forward it over to you. No, that's awesome.
You are a good man, Michael.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Julie, where can people find out more about you and the awesome work you're doing?
Oh, thank you for asking. I've got a website at www.juliewinklegiulioni.com. And there's lots of information there and some free resources for organizations and for leaders who really want to make development a central pillar of their culture and their priority.
That's awesome, and I'll definitely have that in the show notes. So, Julie, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate you and all the awesome work you're doing.
Pleasure speaking with you, Michael. Thank you.
Likewise.
Hey, it's Michael again. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate it. If you're like many people, you're dealing with some significant stress and possibly approaching burnout.
I know how you feel. In 2009, my burnout led to a year of worst-case scenarios. I do not want that to happen to you. If you go to breakfastleadership.com, you can register for a free webinar on burnout prevention, as well as get a free checklist to have successful mornings. Start off each day the right way. Again, that's at breakfastleadership.com. Also, since you are a loyal podcast listener, I'm asking you to like, rate, and review my podcast on iTunes. I look at all the reviews and appreciate your comments, and it helps other potential listeners discover the content I have on the show. I appreciate you, and thanks again for listening.